Hello friends, I hope that your week is going well so far. This week I want to take a look at Acts chapter 3. There is another speech here by Peter who tells the gospel story, but it is very similar to Peter's sermon or speech in the chapter right before it, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. The only thing I'd like to note here in these speeches, Peter is very accusatory toward the Jewish people. Using the descriptor you to the whole crowd rather than just singling out the leaders who were active in Jesus' death. So Peter says to the whole crowd that Jesus is the one you handed over and rejected. You rejected the holy and righteous one. You killed the author of life, etc., etc. But the reason I mention this is that we are seeing a lot in the news lately about anti-Semitism. And it seems to be applied to anyone who speaks out on behalf of the Palestinians or dares to say that the Israelis are also doing some pretty bad things in their own right. And that dates to long before this current war in Gaza. It's a bad situation and a lot of bad things on both sides. So it's interesting to me that one side or advocating for one side suddenly gets labeled as anti-Semitism. And I find that definition of anti-Semitism rather dubious and self-serving. By contrast, passages like this speech by Peter have been used by Christians for centuries, really, to justify truly anti-Semitic views and injustices. I even remember when you may remember yourself, when the conservative Southern Baptist Convention's 1996 resolution to aggressively evangelize the Jews provoked anger and accusations of anti-Semitism. And some of these New Testament passages and related feelings were just under the surface for many Christians. I remember growing up and hearing and knowing a lot of Jewish jokes or jokes about Jewish people. It was a part of the culture over the years. And so these kinds of passages should, I think, raise our awareness and our sensitivity to the ways they have been misused over time. But the main thing I want to mention today is what actually leads up to Peter's speech. The story begins with Peter and John going to the temple to pray, which is to be expected because, after all, at this time, they are still practicing Jews themselves. And while they are entering into the temple gate, they encounter a man who cannot walk, who has been carried there by people, it says. I don't know, that's some of his friends. But they have brought him to ask people for alms, or he's begging, really, for money to help. And I guess there could be certainly some discussion here in the fact that Peter does not simply give him the money. I mean, Peter has an excuse, really. He doesn't have any money to give. So what he does instead is to improve the man's situation in obviously a much more substantive way. And how might this affect our views of mission work? That's ripe for conversation. Of course, it's easy to just say we shouldn't just give people money. Does that really change anything? Or it's easy to evoke that oft-used phrase that it's certainly better to teach a person to fish rather than just giving them a fish. And all of that is well and good, except that I find the vast majority of time we don't actually teach them to fish. We don't actually help in a more substantive way. We just believe that we should, and what we end up doing is we don't even give them a fish, let alone money. It is, after all, a whole lot harder to do something more substantive, and personally, I'd rather help with a quick fix than do nothing at all. But that whole topic is kind of ripe for conversation, and see the questions that are attached for today. But perhaps the biggest thing that I notice here is how Peter and John, and to some degree, I assume the rest of the disciples as well, are doing the same kinds of things that they had experienced Jesus doing. Here, they are even healing a man, and I remember way back in volume 1 of the Luke Acts story, in Luke 7, John the Baptist sends his disciples to find out if Jesus is the one who is to come, or should they await another. And Jesus sends word back to John saying, "Go and tell John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, those with a skin disease are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them." That, according to Jesus, was the proof that he was the one that they were looking for. And now those same kinds of proofs seem to mark the followers of the risen Christ after Easter. Today, the lame man even walks. That was one of Jesus's big proofs. Of course, we don't often see those kinds of miracles and miraculous healings and people being raised from the dead, but surely there are things we can do or could do as the church, things that we do already, hopefully to some degree, the gathering of disciples of the risen Christ that point beyond ourselves to the power of the one who is in our midst. Things that make a difference to the world, to the people around us, to the lives of people every day. Perhaps think about what those things are, what those things could be or should be, and maybe this week when you yourself are just on the way to the temple to pray, another ordinary day, or to church, or just going to work or to the store or some such place, pay attention to the people that you encounter and how you might represent the grace and healing of Christ to them. Go in peace, friends. Amen.